And we are rolling. Hi, I'm Ron. Welcome to my lunch break. Today, Muncie, Indiana has the weather of Cleveland. So if you're in Cleveland, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not in Cleveland and it's overcast and raining, it's like you're in Cleveland. Worst places to be. That's where I grew up. But we're not here to talk about Cleveland right now. We're here to talk about Jesus. And what I'm going to talk to you about is what I see as the similarities. Now, don't get freaked out. The similarities between Christianity, knowing Jesus, and New Age. Now, this is my, I'll work with me a little bit, but when you are a counterfeiter, you counterfeit $100 bills, usually the highest denomination you can, because it's valuable, and you try to copy it as best you can so that you don't get busted. That's what a counterfeiter does. Now, if you work for the FBI or the Treasury Department, from what I've heard, the way they train these guys is they don't show them counterfeit bills, they show them the real deal, the real $100 bills, and you get to know everything about it. And that way, when you see the counterfeit, you're like, oh, okay, this doesn't match up to what I know to be truth. So, the best way to know Jesus, one, is to know truth. And so you go to his word, you go to him in the spirit, and that's what I'm going to circle around to. And those are the two I'm going to start with just at the outset. And more so the spiritual part I'm going to focus on. With the similarities between Jesus and New Age that I've seen, at least in my own life, is a lot of it you have to operate by faith and you have to intuit what is occurring spiritually. And you're using your imagination, your intuition, it's almost the artistic side of you. It's not like math. Now, there's a part of it that can be like math that's very uh, if then statements. If you give your heart to Jesus, you believe in your heart, confess with your mouth, then that is to salvation. That is there are if then statements that you can get biblically. But spiritually, to know Jesus, it's very experiential. And there are conditions even there. Jesus' peace, love, joy, kindness, meekness, temperance, long suffering, fruits of the Spirit. And there's even, this is going to sound odd, but there's even a fear of the Lord, but it's not like fear, I'm going to bash you and punch you in the face. It's more like a reverential fear. When I met God, he was so holy, and that word holy means separate, set pure, clean, powerful, not overbearing, but it is his nature that puts us in proper perspective. And when I encountered him, the encounter was also loving. So it put me in perspective that yes, he's God, I'm not. Yes, he's God, and he died for me because my value is what he thought his son was worth. And I've heard this from Dan Moeller, Todd White, and others. You don't pay you don't pay a price for something you think is trash. And so if God paid his son for you and me, that means our value is that high. And so we are esteemed, so that when you discern spiritual activity, you go by, you're going to have to distinguish it. And this part is just me. It's almost like an instinct of when you know something is good, because in the Bible, it never said once when someone met Jesus, but physically, well, especially spiritually, that no one's ever confused. No one ever goes like, okay, I don't know who you are and I don't like you. Now Saul, who turned to Paul, said, okay, I don't know you, but who are you, Lord? He immediately recognized Jesus as Lord, but he didn't know who he was. In time, and Jesus, even in that moment, goes, "Hey, it's me, Jesus. Come on, get up. You're my guy. Let's go." So we will spiritually recognize God because He is love. He is our Creator. He is the originator. He is the authentic one. When you meet Him, it's like seeing that $100 bill that you're like, okay, this is the real deal. And also, it will, if, like, I met Jesus before I had any word in me, and I just recognized him from when I was a kid. And I knew as a child I was happy and I had love. I left that experience of love for decades. And when I got back into his presence, which totally matched up with when I was a child and I was happy. I'm like, oh my gosh, I recognize you as a child. I've missed you for so long. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, I got back to you in his name. I'm like, we'll work it out. I'm like, you look good. You haven't changed a bit. And I recognize Jesus. You'll recognize Jesus. You will recognize the things of his spirit. Some of it can freak you out because now with me, and I don't mean that in a bad way, freak you out, but when the Spirit of God touches a human body, there can be times when it's overwhelming, like on a roller coaster. You know you're safe, but you're like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out. Even though you know that's why you go on a roller coaster, because the experience is kind of exhilarating. You feel like you're in danger, but you know you're not, and that's the fun of it. With God, it's not that you're in danger, but you know you're in the presence of the one who created you, the one who created everything, the creator of life, all encompassing, all powerful, overwhelming, and yet accepting, inviting, endearing, entreating, hospitable, and like a longing, like for a loved one that we haven't seen in forever. And so it is the longing of a heart that is fulfilled in the meeting of him, and that's how you recognize it. Now, with Satan in the New Age, sorry, not hating. I love me some New Age folk. I'm just, yeah, it's like this. If you had a computer, two computers, one had two different operating systems, one had a virus, the other one didn't, and it was operating correctly. The computer isn't the problem, it's the coding on the inside. And this is the difference between New Age and Christianity. I will say, as a Christian, Jesus says he's the truth, the life, and the way, and no one comes to the Father except through him. And when I met him, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's about right, because I've met other gods. And I've been with Native American shaman folk, I've been with Buddha Zen masters. Like the people, love the communities, not the spirit that operates in them, not the boss of each one of those, I don't know, I want to say denominations, but the places where it came out of. I met these deities, thought they were God at the time, but it was there was power, there was, looking back on it, it was, I'm God, you're not, mess with me, you're going to get messed with. Might do something for you, but maybe not. And there was no prolonged, actually, for me, there was no love. And there was no change of heart. There was encounters, there was some revelation of like, oh, there's a supernatural, but it didn't lead me towards loving God with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength, and loving my neighbor as myself. Now that's what Jesus has done for me. That's what he says. You know, if you want to know what the whole Jesus trip's about, two sentences, all the laws, all the prophets, two lines. Love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. Now, saying it's easy, doing it is another thing. By his Spirit, I have a renewed love, a living love that has never left me for 20 years. Even when I haven't when I haven't done right, he hasn't split. He's got me back on track. When things have gotten really bad, he was there and got me back up. And the cool thing is, not only does he get me back up, but he expects me to live on a very high level, a high plane. Actually, what it is, to make it less New Age sounding, is I have been in the presence of God's love morning, noon, and night for years. And it's not for me, it's not for a few, it's not for anyone special, it's for everyone. That's what got me off drugs. That's what gets me to love my neighbor, even if they're going to hurt me. Nothing wrong with calling the cops. Nothing wrong with getting away from the bad guy. But when you do call the cops and you do get away from them, it's the heart isn't hating. There can be hurt, but you get past it. Not so much as letting go and ignoring it. It's more like processing, going, God, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. If they knew you as I did, they might even do better than I'm doing now. And so, Lord, have mercy on them and have mercy on me. And life gets better. And so the similarities is that there is an operating spirit between New Age and Christianity. These spirits are at war with each other. They're not able to be one. One's light, one's dark. I'm saying Jesus is light. He says I am the truth, the light, and the way. I'm saying the other ones are darkness. Now the cool thing is, if you've never met Jesus and you don't even know what I'm talking about, he's not going to come down on you as far as like, oh, bad. It's more like, hey, listen, you think you know and like what you got now, but let me show you who I am, and then you can judge it next to what you had, and you can choose. And he's like, by the way, before you is death and life, choose life. And it will be inviting, not just enticing, not just alluring, but satisfying and gratifying. But there's also free will in both, and there is faith involved in both, and then there is I don't want to say the final choice, but eventually it is the way you walk out life. In both, it is going to be by your faith. And with Jesus, I've seen myself go from death to life, and a lot of other people. And that's, so that's just, so if you're in New Age and you're hearing Christians talk about the spirit, and you're like, well, that's just a different spirit. Well, you're right. It is just a different spirit. I'm just saying it's the right spirit. And if you ask any of your spirit guides who Jesus is, they will never say he is the truth, the life, and the way. Or they might say he is an ascended master, but he's one of many. When you talk to Jesus, he's going to tell you pretty much who he is, and it's going to be powerful, and it will be loving, and you'll have a choice, and you'll be able to say no. He'll never make you a slave. He will never change you by bad you. It'd be more like, now if you're doing bad, he will convict you, but that's like, hey dude, you ought to stop doing heroin. How about I help you? Or let's say in my case, it was drugs and smoking just regular cigarettes. I know that might not sound too bad, but dude, that was one of the hardest drugs I had to give up. He gave me a sweet taste on my tongue, so that instead of wanting the hit of the smoke, it was, by the way, Marlboro Red, soft pack, 10 years, 2 packs a day, lung candy, hated it, couldn't stop. Gave my heart to Jesus, got a sweet taste on my tongue, took the hit of the cigarette, it would go away, missed the taste of the sweet taste when I took the hit of the cigarette, so it went from, instead of chain smoking to semi-chain smoking to a cigarette every once in a while, and to just a couple of cigarettes. What it is I would wait longer and longer between puffs. And then it went from 2 packs a day. In 2 weeks, I was down to 4 cigarettes because the sweet taste was that much better. And I remember being in the kitchen, having 4 cigarettes in my hand, because that's how much I was allotted that day. That's how much I needed. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can do this now. And I could feel his love. His love was always with me, still is. And he will be with you. And I just kind of looked up, it was in the kitchen, I looked up the ceiling, kind of like looking at it. I'm like, listen, this is going to be weird. I've been smoking a long time, but all right, we'll make a lifestyle change. Help me through it. He did. It's been 20 years. I can be around smoking. Don't miss it. And I hope I can help you get off smoking if you want it as well. And it's fun. I got my lungs back. Yay, God. So that's what God has done for me. Those are some of, when I was in New Age and Buddhism, there were spirits. but they never brought me to a peace and a completion as a person. There was supernatural, but there was never a fulfillment and a consistency that I have felt with Jesus. And I know intuitively who he is. And it is a profound love that passes all understanding. And you're invited. And so you just simply ask him into your heart. It is, the Bible says, believe in your heart, confess with your mouth, and that leads to salvation. And then what it is, it's not just a prayer, it's a lifestyle. It is to choose him, to pick up your cross and follow him. And what that means is, it doesn't mean you're going to get crucified. It means you're going to have to learn of him. And who you are is not who you're going to be. It's going to be better. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. Might be challenging, but you will overcome, because we all will, because he did. And as he's in us, we become like him. He's an overcomer and victorious. That's how we are victorious already, and we are walking towards that victory, and that's how we overcome. So with that, that's the end of my lunch. Hope you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye. Peace.
26, Dan.
That's my radio. Gotta talk to Dan. Bye.